Patrick Hayslow.
Hello, in this video I'm going to be talking about a musical topic that I'm really interested in. It's something that I've applied in my own music, but in this discussion I'm going to be using examples from my favourite soundtrack, Cowboy Bebop, composed by Yoko Kanno. The topic in question is sound in music, and by this I mean sounds that are not produced by a musical instrument. I'm going to talk about 3 different approaches to sound in music, take a look at some examples, and discuss the usage and merits of each of these different kinds of sound in music.
Non-musical sounds.
The first is what I'm going to call non-musical sounds. These sounds don't have to be in time with the music or even in the same key, if they have discernible pitch at all. Let's take a look at the first example from Felt Tip Pen. Hopefully you could hear those creaking and tapping noises in the background. Without them being pointed out, you might not even notice them, but they are important. They add a very specific ambience to the recording. Coupled with a twangy guitar and thumpy bass, they work in tandem with the music to evoke the image of a smoky tavern or bar with pool tables, creaky wooden furniture and such. The second example of these non-musical sounds is from the track 24 Hours Open from the opening of the Future Blues soundtrack album. The track goes on like this for about 3 minutes, as alarms and sirens go off, a police car is heard in the distance, before the rocker sounds fade out, and the next track on the background CD flips over, and in turn slowly fades out also. This track to me is a masterful use of adding non-musical sounds to music. The addition of gunshots and screaming customers instantly transforms the elevator music track into a story without ever having to change anything in the music itself. It communicates something to the listener that could not be done anywhere near as effectively with musical content alone. Both 24 Hours Open and Felt Tip Pen show the functionality of adding sound to music to communicate imagery and storytelling.
Vocal samples.
The next area of sound I'd like to discuss is that of vocal samples, specifically spoken word vocal samples. These could come from TV, movies, radio shows, or elsewhere. Adding a spoken word vocal sample is quite common in genres like hip-hop and electronic music, but let's take a look at some examples from Cowboy Bebop. The first, Give and Take.
I will become master of the universe. I will become master of the universe. I will become master of the universe.
My extremities pulsating with tingling sensation.
I will become master of the universe.
My extremities pulsating with tingling sensation.
Having these vocal samples above the kick drum gives this opening a bit more substance without having to fill the sonic space with any more musical textures. This substance is both oral, giving your ear more to listen to than just a kick drum, silence, and some other musical sounds. It is also mental. Your brain has more to think about. What does it mean to be master of the universe? Is that literal? What's causing these pulsating extremities? The sparse instrumentation, in combination with the vague, semi-poetic vocal samples, establishes an ominous feeling at the start of the track. It's also foreshadowing a later hook in the song. Let's take a look at the next example, Autumn in Ganymede.
The dramatized study of a man and a woman, dreams and fantasies take on a life and a power of their own.
Here, something a bit out of the ordinary happens. There's a guitar solo, but it's given almost equal footing to the spoken word samples in the background. It's common practice in jazz and other forms of improvised music to leave space in an improvised solo, both to give the things you do play more emphasis, but also to give other members of the band more opportunities to input their own musical ideas. However, in this example, the space is being filled by samples from old sci-fi movies like Mondo Keyhole and The Brain from Planet Eris. This has the effect of evoking the aesthetic of this era of film, which is important given the context of the recording as a soundtrack to a sci-fi anime, one which draws on the many tropes and traits of these films, its predecessors. This effect of evoking aesthetics, as in Autumn in Ganymede, evoking thought, as in Give and Take, and filling sonic space, as in Both, makes spoken word vocal samples an effective tool in the arsenal of a composer or producer. They also have the added benefit of giving satisfaction or nostalgia to those who recognise the samples.
Musical sounds.
The last area of sound I'd like to discuss is musical sounds. Now, I first have to specify what I mean by this. In this context, I'm obviously not talking about sounds for musical instruments. What I mean is non-musical sounds used for musical purposes. Unlike the previously discussed non-musical sounds, these sounds interact directly with the music with either pitch, rhythm, or both. The first example is from Too Good, Too Bad. The rising tone is what I want to focus on in this example. Now, it probably comes from a synthesizer of some sort, so it's possible that it technically comes from an instrument, but it's not being used in a typical way, so I'll allow it. The effect of this sound is simple yet effective. It piggybacks on the big opening that we've just heard and leads us into the next part of the tune, where the trombone begins playing a funky bass line. Without it, all we'd have to connect the opening fanfare to the groove that follows is the pattering marching drum pattern, which has pulse, but not necessarily direction. The rising tone leads our ear somewhere, and we expect something else to happen. When the trombone comes in, kicking off the next section of the song, the tone resolves, showing that we've arrived at a new destination. The same effect is used at the end of the recording. The final example I'd like to look at is Piano Black. This one's a real treat. The track opens with this mechanical clacking noise, which repeats over and over for the entire recording, with a few exceptions. What's important about this sound, though, is that it is integrated into the tune itself. It has a discernible rhythm within the tune's time signature of 3/4. In fact, if you take a look at the sheet music, which I happen to own, the sound is actually notated in the score. The staff is labelled percussion, but it's not really percussion, at least not from any auxiliary instrument that I'm aware of. No, it is clearly just a rhythmic sound to which Yoko Kanno's jazz waltz is anchored. This repetitive mechanical sound adds a driving momentum to the tune, which something like a drum kit to me wouldn't be able to deliver as effectively. This track is a perfect example of how sounds can be integrated musically into a recording, or even possibly a live performance. Hey, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that discussion of sound in music. If you have anything you'd like to add or any questions to ask, please leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you liked any of the music, whether that be the samples from Cowboy Bebop or my own original music in the background, there are links in the description. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboy. This is so bad. Hold on, I'm gonna take a drink real quick. Okay.